Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Integrate Art, Sound, and Code into Unreal Engine with Perforce P4. Cool, welcome. So today, I'm going to try to go through kind of a variety of things. So depending where you are in your journey of working with artists and working with Unreal and Perforce, hopefully there will be something for you in here. So to start off, I'm going to talk a little bit about just general ideas of what is a good pipeline, talking about some stream setups with P4, as well as folder setups. Talk a little bit about virtual streams, which are one of my favorite things, and I think they're not used as much as they should be. And then those last two there are all going to be going through a demo of actually working with some artists on a little small project in Unreal Engine. So that'll probably be the bulk of it. We'll be going through that demo. And with that, I'm emphasizing more the experience of the artists in this case. And I'm not doing a lot of super fancy stuff in the engine because I think that's often the piece that's missing is how do we get the artists involved in this workflow? How do we make it so they feel comfortable contributing things to version control so that the developers can get access to their files and they can be part of the pipeline instead of this kind of separate thing, which is how artists can end up feeling sometimes. I have a resources page here. If you scan this, I have some links that I will mention during the presentation. Those will all be here. I'll show this one more time at the end as well, but I'll talk about some things that I've put up on GitHub that are available for you, as well as some other Perforce resources, so that should all be here. Okay, so the epic battle of artists versus organization. So on the one hand, artists, they don't learn version control. And I know this because I was one of them. I think I still am one of them. That when I was a VFX artist and when I was a musician, never once heard about version control. It was not a concept anyone talked about. And when I did start learning it, it broke my brain a little bit because it wasn't something I'd thought about. It was a different way of thinking about how to manage versions of files. And then on the other hand, having a lack of structure, which is how a lot of art teams end up, is painful. It makes it easy to lose things, forget things. Communicating changes and file paths via Slack or Discord or email or when I worked on the pipeline team at the VFX studio, we had to write all of this custom in-house stuff to keep track of paths for people because we didn't just have version control. So on the one hand, we don't learn it. On the other hand, it's painful. And so is there a better way? How can we bridge this gap? How can we make version control beneficial for artists? And how do we avoid some of that pain of disorganization? So I gave some thought to my 10 years of experience or so developing pipelines in VFX and then also working with gaming studios for the last 4 years with Perforce. And looking at what is it that makes a pipeline good. And one is that it brings everyone together, so everyone's on the same page, it's unified. It's clear, so it's no more complicated than necessary. And as a pipeline developer, often our definition of necessary might be more complicated than other people would like, but trying to keep that in mind of like, how can we keep this simple? How can we keep it straightforward? And then it needs to be adaptable. If it's too rigid, then a new project comes along where you have to do something different and you're out of luck. So starting off with what does it mean to be unified? There's two approaches to this. So one is Perforce, right? Is if everyone, all of your artists, your game designers, your coders, are all storing their versions in the same place, then you have that single source of truth. But even within that, how do you store stuff in your Perforce server, right? How do you store things in your P4 server? And so for that, I wanted to point out this tip that was from this talk last year, setting up an Unreal Engine studio the epic way. If you haven't watched this talk, it's on YouTube, it's amazing. Definitely go check it out. I've linked to it in that resources page. And one of the important notes is this. Most studios, including Epic Games, commit features and content directly into main. So this means everyone's submitting their content into the same place. And it means that you encounter problems and challenges sooner rather than working in isolation and then having a big headache trying to merge all of that later on. So with this idea, Epic has built a lot of their tooling around that concept of how can we work together better, all in one branch, all in one stream. And then that also lets you take advantage of exclusive locking in Perforce so that two people aren't working on the same file at the same time. And with Unreal Engine files, you can't merge those, so this saves you a lot of pain, a lot of wasted work. So I want to show you my example of my ideal stream setup in P4. It's like that. So I think that the key here is starting with just the one mainline stream that everybody works in should be your default thought. Now, realistically, studios will have much more complicated setups than that, but I think it's important to approach that of making more streams as you need them and not starting off with a lot more complexity. Because every step that involves merging and branching is just more overhead for whoever is in charge of your server. So if you can keep it simple, that's great. So is it unified? Heck yes. Is it clear? Yep, you just work in this one place. And is it adaptable? Well, let's take a look at that. Oh yeah, I did have a quick tip though. So I call this, it's so good I had to ignore it twice. And this is a tip when you're setting up your stream, that there's this little field you can see down in the bottom left there, this ignored field. Here, I can highlight it like this. You can put paths in there in your stream, and then even if you don't have a P4 ignore file set up, those will still be ignored. And it's impossible for anyone to submit those when they're working in this stream. So I always recommend at least doing this bare minimum of your saved folder, your intermediate folder, and your derived data cache, and if you have Mac users, this .ds store. Just put those in the ignored on your stream, just so you don't ever end up with those in your version control, because that's just a huge pain to clean up. And then I would also put a P4 ignore file in the root of my workspace so that I'm also getting that. And I have in my resources an example P4 ignore template that you can use that's based off of the one in Epic's documentation, as well as changes that have been made by Double Negative, and kind of combined all of those together to get a nice comprehensive ignore file that you can use. Oh yeah, there it is. That's the ignored part. Okay, so Epic has this thing that I think they call it the native folder structure. And what this means is that you have your engine folder next to your project folder. And this is just a really important Epic thing that you do. If you're not using a custom build of the engine, then just forget that engine folder. Just do your project folder there. And then inside of that project folder is where you'll have your game project. And now what I add to this is a DCC folder. So that stands for Digital Content Creation. So this is where your Maya, Blender, Pro Tools, whatever, all of your art files or your art project files go in there. And then imports is this kind of middle ground between your artist tools and your engine tools. So this is where you'll export the images, the textures, the FBX files, that kind of stuff to bring into the engine. And you'll see in a second here why that is. So just to give you an overview, we have the engine. All that stuff goes in the engine folder. In the project folder, this is where our project is, as well as our content, and our plugins folder would also be here. And then our DCC is where we have Blender, Houdini, Maya, etc. And then inside of those folders, you might also further break it down by scenes or characters or props. Or you could do this the other way around. You could have it organized first by scenes, characters, items, and then have the source files inside of that. And then you have your imports. And so this you could organize however you want, perhaps by type of export, like FBXs or images or audio. And then inside of there, you can also have your organization for your different scenes, characters. And so this is sort of an overview of the whole thing, right? And I've grayed out the ones that should be ignored. And so you've got this whole big structure here. So the question is, how are we doing on our 3 principles of a good pipeline? Unified, totally. Yeah, so clear. It's adaptable. We got everything together. Our pipeline person loves it. Our developer loves it. Let's check in with the artists on what they think. Well, unified, I guess. Clear? Definitely not. Adaptable? I don't know. I'm overwhelmed by all of this, right? I'm an artist. I don't understand what all this engine folder stuff is. I don't need all of these files. How can I work on this? So now it's time for virtual streams to the rescue. So virtual streams, who here has ever used virtual streams with P4? Anybody? Okay, great. I'm talking to the right audience then, because no one's using it. So in P4, when you set up your mainline stream, like I just showed you, it has everything, right? It's got the engine folder, the project folder, the DCC tools, imports, all of that. What a virtual stream is it allows you to make a filtered view. So a virtual stream that's a child of a mainline is able to see up to everything the mainline sees, or possibly less. And then if that has a child stream, that could see even less. The important thing here is that a virtual stream doesn't get to see more of the mainline than its parent does. So it's kind of about like progressively narrowing down what's available when you work in that stream, but all of them are in the same branch. So even if I were all the way down here in this bottom, great-grandchild virtual stream, and I edit a file here, it's actually changing it in all of these streams that can see it, all the way up to the main line, right? So I'm still working all in one stream like Epic likes, but I'm able to provide a more manageable chunk of that for my artists to work on. So let me show you kind of what this looks like. So here I have my main stream. You can see over on the left side, I've got all my files. And now I'm going to make a new stream from that main stream. And in this case, we'll have this be for our 3D art. Let's just call it 3D art. And then down here, I'm going to change it to virtual type stream. And so now, when I go to the Advanced tab, there's this share paths here. And in this share ... means everything. But I can type in specific files or specific folders here. So in this case, I want to share that DCC/Blender. And let's share DCC/Houdini. Let's do Maya as well. We can share DCC, ZBrush, /.. And that /.. just means everything in here and all of its subfolders, right? It's a recursive wildcard. And then we also want to add those imports folders, because when the artists are working on it, when they export their FBXs, they're going to put it into this imports/meshes folder. And then same with textures, right? They'll go into their own folder in there. And you'll see why that part is important in a sec here. So when I hit OK, I now have this virtual stream down here. And if I work in that stream, I'll only be able to see those files. And so now let's make another one. This one's going to be for our music. Same thing, I'll go into path. And here we'll just use Reaper is what we're using. So I'm also putting the P4 ignore file in there just to make sure everybody still has that. If you leave that out, you won't have the P4 ignore, and that can be a problem. So then we're going to say imports, music, and DCC is Reaper is the DCC I'm using for music here. So now you can see I've got these two virtual streams. And so when someone comes along to work in one or the other, they're only going to get those paths that we predefined. So it means they're having to sync much less. It's going to sync the files much faster because they're only getting the files they need. And then if you want to make this a little bit easier, because that's kind of a pain to type in those paths, I made a little utility here that's on this resources page. This is the one I linked earlier. It's called this virtual streams utility down here. And on the GitHub page, there's instructions about how to install it, how to use it, all of that. But the short version is, in P4V, you can add custom tools. If you go up to Tools, Manage Tools, Custom Tools, this can be anything you want. These could be Bash scripts, PowerShell scripts, Python scripts, executable files, whatever you want. And all you have to do is say New Tool, or I'll edit this one here. And then I can choose some options. So I give it a name, I can put it in a folder if I want. Set some options like what application it's running. Like I said, could be anything on your machine. The arguments that you want to pass into it, the directory it starts in, some other things like if you want a terminal window. And then this add to context menus. I can select from various things inside of P4V. So in this case, I'm doing the currently selected stream, %T. And if I have that add to applicable context menus checked, what that means is that when I right click on a stream, this tool will show up. So if I right click here, you can see, oh, it's cut off the screen. Oh no, oh no. Well, down at the very bottom of the screen is my custom tool that I just added there. So now what I can do is I can make a new stream. So let's say in this case, I want to make one that's only the Unreal project. So like my developers don't need all the Blender and Maya files, they just need those imports. So in this case, instead of having to set those paths manually and type those in, what I can do is I can just say OK, and then I'll right click on it, on this UE only, right click, choose my custom tool. Sorry, again, that's cut off. And what this does is it's actually going to load all of the files and folders that are in the parent stream of this one, and then it lists them in this kind of visual interface like this. So you can see we've got those same folders. And then I can just go in, open them up, and check what are the ones that I want this virtual stream to be able to see. So in this case, like imports, I want all those. I want the game folder, the engine folder. I don't want the DCC folder, just engine, game. And you can see it's generating those paths over on the right. And if I wanted to, I could uncheck one, and it'll update that to say, OK, now I need to import these individually. Or if I recheck it, it's smart enough to go, oh, that's all inside of imports. I'll just say share imports. So it's just this kind of nicer, simpler interface for determining what files you can access there. And then when I work in that, I can go edit, and I can just check that path. And I can see, oh, look, it updated it right there for me. So the whole idea here is that I want people to feel empowered to use virtual streams so that they can really easily compartmentalize things when you're passing stuff off to your artists. So they only get what they need. And then you could even make child streams off of these. And like I said, a virtual stream can only see up to what its parent sees, but it could see less. So underneath 3D, we could have a stream just for one character. Or you could have a stream just for one scene, or just for one user. Like I could make one for myself, and then I could use that stream utility, or I could even update manually if I wanted to, so that I'm only ever getting the files that I want. So especially for people working remotely on home internet connections, this can be a lifesaver to realize that I only need to get just the files I need and not everything in the project, but I'm still working on the same files in the same branch as everybody else. OK, so let's take a look at the project that we're going to be using for this demo here. So this is a project in Unreal, and down at the bottom here, I'm going to add the Perforce revision control setting. I just put in my server address and server or my username too. And then for my workspace, as long as I opened this from inside of P4V, I'll know for sure I'm in the right folder. And so I can just click available workspaces and my choice will be there. I always recommend opening your project through P4V by double clicking on it, just so you know you're working on the right copy of your project, right? How many times I've opened a project from somewhere else and then been confused why it doesn't have a workspace because I've copied it before or something like that. So help avoid that and just open it from P4V. And then our artists are going to be using P4.1. So P4.1 is our simpler interface for artists. I'm not going to go into a ton of details about P4.1 right now because we have that down at our booth if you want to come check it out. And it's in beta right now, so you can sign up for the wait list. But basically, it gives this much simpler interface where you can't do things like make streams or do branches and merges, but artists can preview their 3D files. They can really easily open files just by double clicking on them, and it will prompt them to check it out. So it's a much more intuitive way to work for artists. And so that's what I'm going to be using for my art team on this project. So I'm going to be playing the role here of the developer who's actually working in Unreal, and I'm going to be working with a composer and a 3D artist on putting together this little sample. So this project, as you can see it, it's based on the derelict corridor megascans asset that's in Fab. You can get that, and then I've dropped a metahuman in. I've used some animations from Mixamo and used the really amazing retargeting that Unreal has now so that I could apply those right to my metahuman without having to do any extra work. And then I've made a little cinematic here. So let me show you what we have here. You can see I've got a camera animating and this guy kind of exploring this survival horror sort of area. Can we turn up the sound a little bit? Okay, yeah. So right now I put in the sound effects for the footsteps, but that's it, right? We don't really have much else in the environment. He's walking along, exploring this spooky corridor with his flashlight. And then we come around this corner here. And we're not going to show this in the demo here, but these footsteps are all done with meta sound, so it's randomly choosing different footstep sounds from a selection that I've chosen for this. Comes up, it looks at this door, hears something behind him, and then something startles him, and he runs away, dropping his flashlight. And then we do this little eerie, like you're at the end of a episode of Stranger Things or something, right? And then you see something happens here as we're looking at the flashlight on the ground. So that's the project. And the first thing that we want to do is, I have this cinematic planned out. I'm going to make a render of this, maybe a screen capture, and I'm going to send it to my composer. And I'm also going to tell him, hey, I made a music virtual stream for you. So let's go check on him.
Hey there, Jase. Yeah, I'm just working on some music for this project right now. Working on getting some spooky sounds going on here. Yeah, so I'm going to keep working on this for a little bit, though. But yeah, let me show you what I'm doing so far. So here I have P4.1, and you already set up that virtual stream for me. So the first thing that I need to do is click P4 servers to add my P4 server. And so that's this login credentials here. I just enter my password, and there we go. So now I'm going to say create, and I'm going to choose my Orlando directory that I have here, and I'm going to make a workspace inside of there, and I'll just call that Music Orlando. So I select my depot, and then I select my stream from the dropdown over here, and I'll say create. And now I have a folder, and it'll detect that there are changes to sync. So I'm just going to start by syncing my changes. And there I have it. I've got a folder structure. I'll turn off this filter here. I have this folder structure where I have my DCC folder with Reaper inside of it and that placeholder. And then back up here, I've got, I can also view this in this kind of view. And then I've also got my imports where I can put my music that I render out. So I'm just going to go and save my project real quick. And I'm going to save this in Orlando, Music Orlando, just putting it in that same place there. And I'm going to create a subdirectory for this, and I'm going to move all my media into that because I want everything to be within that workspace folder so I can version all of it and have it all backed up. So I'll hit save. That takes a moment to save, and then I'll come back into here, and when it refreshes, I'll be able to see my current changes. And I actually like to view it like this, where I click Show All Files so that everything is just flat in place here, and then I can click this Filter Changed Items, so it'll only show me the items that are new from whatever the last version was. And great, and I'll just create a version of that. And I'll just keep that local for now. But yeah, come back and check on me in a little bit, and I should have some music for you.
Okay. You can tell he's a composer because his hair is crazy. So now, back in our scene here, while he's working on that, what's something else we can do? So one thing is that it's weirdly quiet, right? We don't have any room sounds. It has that fake video game silence. So I found this asset called Smoke01. It's actually one of the starter assets that comes with Unreal. And so I've just moved that here into my sound effects folder. And I'm going to make a meta sound source. And so I'll just call this MSS, meta sound source. And this is like the ambient room tone here. We'll call it noise floor. Cool. So because we want this to loop, we're going to delete that one-shot interface. And then I'm just going to add a wave player. We'll just do mono for this to keep it nice and simple. And then I'm going to select that sound, that Smoke01. And we'll make it loop. And then all I have to do is hook up this play, and then the output goes to the output. And that's it. Simplest meta sound you ever saw. So I'll hit save on that. And oh yeah, one thing to note here is that because this is a room tone, I want to sound the same all the time. I don't have anything for attenuation. We'll come back to that in a little bit. So now I'm just going to drag that meta sound source out into my level. And I'll come and, again, no attenuation. I don't want any spatialization on it. And make sure that it's going to auto-activate. So that'll just play as soon as the level loads in. Now it sounds like I'm standing right next to an air conditioner, so let's turn it down a little bit. Let's see how that is. It's nice, it's still a little bit loud. We could probably go down to 0.05. Just so we have like a nice ongoing room tone, so there's not that weird artificial silence. Yeah, I think that sounds nice. Cool. Okay, so now moving on, let's make sure we save those changes. So when I save them, because I have the Perforce integration, it's going to prompt me to check those out. So I'll check out those files, and then I can just go down and hit submit changes, and then I can submit those with a little message just right from the editor. So I can make sure that any other developers working on this can get my changes, or maybe more importantly, so I can roll back to them if I screw something up. Not that that's ever happened to me before. Cool, and you can see it said that change list was submitted, and if I go to P4V and I look at my submitted change lists, I can see that noise floor one that I just added right there. And I can see, I can open it up, see what files I added. Okay, so now coming back in here, let's try a different workflow. So this door has this cool texture, but the door is actually flat, right? And so I feel like when we're looking at it in the cinematic, it feels flat. So I'm going to just navigate to this asset and find the static mesh for that door. And we're just going to navigate to that in our content browser. And when I open that up, we can sorry, you don't even have to open it up. We can just export it from here. So we can export this as an FBX. So again, I'm going to go and put this in that imports folder, so that that imports folder is the one thing that we'll all have in common, right? That the artists and the developers in Unreal will have in common. So it's kind of like our inbox outbox. And so I'm going to put that in there. And then that also means that I can set the path where I expect that file to be, so that when they submit a new version of it, I've already got that import path set. And in this case, I actually forgot to do that. So I'm actually going to come back and do that in a second. But now that I've uploaded that and submitted it, we can send that to our 3D artist.
Hey there, Jase. Hey, Unreal Fest. Yeah, I'm just working on improving that door a little bit because, yeah, I agree. It looks a little bit flat as it is. So I just added a little geometry. But I wanted to show you just real quick how I made my workspace. So I'm just using P4.1 for this just because I want to do something quick and simple. And I'm using the virtual stream for 3D art. If I were going to work on this where I also was the one doing the integrating of the model into Unreal, then I would probably use a different virtual stream or even that mainline stream if I wanted everything, so that I could do that to kind of configure it myself. But in this case, I'll just let you handle that, and I'll just submit the new FBX. So first, this is what I did. I made my virtual stream, and then I just synced everything to it. And now, in my case, I just have the DCC folder with Blender in it. And now I'm just going to drag my Blender file into here. So I'll just move it here. I could copy it, but I figure I'll just move it and hit refresh. And then I'll see I've got my Blender file there. And let me just open this up in here. So I'll just save that, and I'm going to export this FBX. And in this case, I just want to go up to that imports directory, meshes, and I'll just drop it into here. And then I'll save this here. So now when I go back into P4.1, I'll hit refresh, and I'll notice I have yet another file that I don't want. Here, you know what? Let me view flat and just view added files. So this .blend1, it's an autosave file for Blender. I don't want that, so I'm just going to right-click and ignore that one. I'll do everything with .blend1 because that's Blender autosaves. So now when I refresh this, that blend1 goes away. So that's good. In this case, I really should have made a version before, but I'll just make this now, and I'll submit that for you.
Cool. So now let's go grab that. We go into P4V and go to the meshes folder and say get latest. When you run get latest, it'll run it on whatever folder you have selected. So if you want to just sync a smaller number of files, that's a way you can do that. So we'll grab this from meshes here. And now when I come in, I can re-import my mesh. So you can see we've still got this flat version that doesn't have that geometry on it yet. And it failed because, like I said, I didn't set up my import path for that properly yet. And here's why I want to tell you another really cool tip. I just learned about this recently, and I feel stupid that I didn't know this was a thing. If you go to your project settings, or sorry, your editor settings, actually. So if you go to editor preferences, there's this field for your relative import directory. And actually, the easiest way to get to it is just to go to miscellaneous. And there's this import source folder. That's what it's called, a data source folder. If you set this, so in this case, we'd set it to that imports folder. If you have that set, then when you set your import source for files, it will actually put them as a relative path. So you can see here, if I come in and I set this to be my project for this Orlando project, imports, and then I'll choose my meshes, and choose that door FBX, that now you see how that's a relative path down there? Instead of being, C / my username / Perforce / whatever, it actually lets it be relative to that data source directory you set. So then I just import this, and then I just need to reset the texture after I put this on here, but you can see we have that little bit of extra geometry there for that little paint chip on the door. So now let's go bring this into the engine, and we can see, oh yeah, we get just like slightly better looking. I know that's super nitpicky, but it was bothering me, so I figured, why not? Probably be better if we even did more detail on the door, but we're just gonna do that for now. Cool, yep, we can see that. Just reacts to the light a little bit better this way. Okay, so now this next one is, we want to add a little bit more immersive sound to this. So we've got these cool light fixtures that are kind of shining here, but it'd be nice if they had a sound to them so that we feel more immersed in the world. Right? It's weirdly silent. So I made a meta sound source there already. And so now all we need to do is set up a sound and put it in there and set up attenuation for this particular sound. So if we come here, I'm not going to show you the sound effects artist. He looked too much like the other two guys. So we're just going to get latest here for this sound effect. And there's this electrical hum. And I'm just going to right click and open this folder. So I can go down to Show in File Explorer, and then I can just go into Unreal and drag that sound in. So let's go to our sound effects folder and drag in that sound effect. And now we'll open up our meta sound. And in this audience, is everyone familiar with setting up attenuation for sounds? No? Maybe? A little? OK. We'll go through just sort of a real quick example of it. So in this case, I'm going to put in this hum sound effect. I'm going to choose hum. And I have it set to loop. And I also turned off the, yeah, you can hear that sounds kind of intense. So we're going to play this very quietly to be a hum. And now down in the source, I'm going to actually set up attenuation. And what attenuation does is it is required to make audio be spatialized in Unreal. So if you don't have one, you can create one at the top there, and it'll basically be the same as this basic one that I have here. When I open this up, you'll see there's a bunch of parameters, but these top two sections are kind of the essential ones. The first part here is the attenuation of the volume, so how the volume changes as you get closer and farther away from the object. And so in this case, there's this inner radius, which is when you're closer than that many Unreal units, it's going to be full volume. And the second number, the fall-off distance, is when you're outside of this range, you're not going to hear it at all. So that's basically the start of that setup. And so if I select this, I can actually see it visually too. So now that I have that attenuation object on there, you can see that's the inner radius. When I'm inside of that, it's going to be full volume. And then if I zoom way out, you can see the outer sphere here. This is the area outside of which I won't hear it at all. Now for this hum of a light bulb, that's way too big, right? I don't want to be hearing this from the next room. It only really makes sense when I'm right up near it. So in this case, I'm going to just make a new sound attenuation. So just right click, audio, attenuation. And I'll call this one small attenuation. And so now with this, we can just open it up. And I'm going to make this inner radius much smaller, like 50 units. So that's half a meter. And then the fall-off distance, maybe 1,000 actually. We'll keep it fairly small. And then I'm also going to change it from linear to, they have a setting here called natural sound. So it kind of tries to do a natural logarithmic fall-off of how sound is going to go as you get closer and farther away. So I'm just going to leave that on the defaults. And now, if I go back to my meta sound and I just swap out this attenuation for this small attenuation, and when we save it, when we come look, you'll see now that inner sphere is really small. That's that half-meter sphere. And then if we zoom back a little bit, we'll see this outer radius just kind of makes it into this other room. So if we're playing this quietly, we probably won't really hear it from out there over the other sounds like footsteps and the ambient sound. And so now, as our character walks up, we just get that little spooky hum from that light. And we also hear it pan off to the right as we go by it. So now let's go check in with our composer, because we're getting close to the end of time here, and I want to be sure we have a finished scene for you before the end. So let's see how he's doing.
All right, let me just render out this underscore and submit it here for you. So, yeah, okay. I think that's good. All right, let me pop back into P4.1. All right, here I am. Detect changes. Okay. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff. I've got these backup files. So in this case, I actually don't want these RPP backup files. These are little autosave files that it does so that it can roll back to previous changes, basically assuming that you're not using version control. So I actually could turn that off in my preferences. I probably should do that. But for now, what I want to do is I don't want to end up with a bunch of these duplicate files in my version control, since that's what version control does for me. So instead, I'm going to ignore these. And so I'm going to right click and choose ignore. And in this case, I want all items, not just this one specific file, but all items with this extension. And now when I refresh, you can see all those go away. So they're just being ignored from my version control because I don't want those in there. Cool. So now, yeah, I want to keep these peaks files. I want to keep these little pre-renders I have as well as my final renders. If I view this in not show all files, I can see the difference between what I have in my imports folder, where I've got these 3 different layers that can be put into the game. And if I go back, I can see in here I have my project folder with my project file and then some other media and peaks files and things in there. So that all looks good. So first I'm going to save that locally, and I'll say like, this is initial cinematic score. Sure, I think that's decent. And now, because I do want to send this to the server so that you can get it and put it into the game, I'm going to click this submit version button. And now this is actually submitting it to the server. You can see here it's uploading all of those files to the P4 server. And now I can see that I have a little change list number here. So that means it's been submitted. So yeah, go ahead and put that in.
All right, so now, again, we'll come in here. We'll select imports. We'll say get latest. So we're just making sure we're getting everybody's changes just in case I've missed anything. And we have these files here. So once again, I'll just open that up in Explorer. And I'm going to come and actually don't have a music folder. So let's go ahead and make one. And we'll call that music. All right, so we're going to have our music folder, and then we're going to open up here and just drag in. We have the score, and then we also have another layer called spooky pads. We'll drag that in here. And then there's this heart thump sound. Yeah, I guess I'll drag that in. I don't think we'll use it right now, but if there's ever a sequel to this talk, then I'll use that sound. So then in here in my sequencer, I'm going to add an audio track, and we'll just label this as music. And then we'll hit the plus icon and choose that new sound that we brought in. And so now if I spin down music, I can see there's the score. I'm actually going to slide it over a little bit because I just added a little extra padding at the beginning and the end. And then there's a moment in our cinematic, let's go find where it is, where our character gets startled and he runs away. And that's where we want to add in this extra layer here. So we'll add the audio, and that was pad, spooky pad. And we'll add that in so that we get a little bit of this, a little bit of spookiness going on there. All right, so now let's go back and let's actually play this thing from the beginning and see our finished product that we have. Hang on. I have no idea what this game is, but seems interesting. So here's that resources page that I linked at the beginning. We just have 5 minutes left. If there are any questions here at the end, feel free to ask them. I know we went through a whole bunch of stuff. And then also, if anyone wants bees, I've got 5 bees. I see a hand. That was a bad throw, but good catch. All right. Oh, that was terrible. I'm so sorry. There you go. Also bad. All right. This is why I work in software and not sports. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. So yeah, please feel free to check this out. I've also got a lot of other resources on there. I like to make little tools, little utilities for P4V, as well as things for Unreal Engine, write little Python libraries, things like that to just make people's lives easier, and I just post those all for free on GitHub. I think it's also worth pointing out that I'm a Perforce person, and I have nothing against GitHub. I love GitHub. We just do different things well, right? And so for sharing open source projects, I love it. So yeah, please, anyone who thinks we have a rivalry, we don't. We're pals. We can coexist. All right, well, thank you all so much. Have a great cocktail hour.